Hello, my name is Annette, and you are listening to The Heart of You. Welcome back. This is episode 45, and I'm going to talk about a subject today that's going to be a little counterintuitive because it requires you to look at something, and this is a podcast. So I'm going to describe it as simply as I can in order to help you to understand the beautiful subject of sacred geometry. Sacred geometry is not a tool. It is the fabric of reality. It's actually how reality comes into form. So to understand sacred geometry is to know how to move and harness the power of energy. So if you imagine that every cell within your body has thousands and hundreds of thousands of sacred geometry structures within them, understanding each one of these structures and how they operate can help you to understand how you can heal yourself, how you can move your energy to a place that is more harmonious, how to basically move through and with the flow of your life. If you know how to use sacred geometry to your advantage, let's say, it is to amplify the energy that you harness. Now, if you're unaware of what type of energy resides in whatever space you're working with, you may not want to amplify that energy because if it's sort of a lower energy or a negative energy, you don't want to amplify that. So you really have to know what energies you're working with, and sacred geometry can help you with that. Let's start really simply. Let's talk about shapes for a minute. So if you take a circle, a square, a triangle, all of these shapes, what is it that comes to mind with each of them? Like, which one are you the most drawn to? So for me, I have a tendency to be drawn towards circular shapes as well as triangles. And so what does that say about me and my energy? Well, a circle is made up of curved lines. Curves are representative of the divine feminine energy. Now, keep in mind, and I've said this before, this has nothing to do with gender. This has everything to do with the quality of energy. So if you want to think of it like a battery, like the positive or negative sides of a battery, it is simply divine feminine or divine masculine energy. Okay. If you are gravitating more towards circles, that is going to tell you that you are maybe needing to be a little bit more in your feminine energy. If you are more gravitating towards squares and straight lines, that's going to be more in your masculine energy. And that's important to know as we move forward in more complex structures. And then the triangle is interesting because it can represent both the divine masculine and the divine feminine energies depending on which way it's pointing. So if you want to think about triangles as being directional, that is a good way of thinking about it. So it is pointing you to the energy. So if any of you have been to the Louvre, you will know that you have the Grand Pyramid, which is the entrance of the Louvre, and it is a triangle that is upright. Now, that is representative of the divine masculine in the way that it is situated. And then if you go downstairs and you notice that there is another triangle, which is actually inverted. So it's pointing downwards. And so that is representative of the divine feminine. So those two in conjunction with each other marks an energetic balance. Once you know this, you will not be able to stop noticing the various different shapes, especially in architecture and throughout history where it has been used. Take, for example, Leonardo da Vinci's The Vitruvian Man, which, if you are not familiar with that, it is a sketch that he did of a man who is inside a square that is within a circle. And many people say that this is the combination of man and nature, which that can be interpreted that way because the circle and the square both representing the divine feminine and the divine masculine. And Earth herself is the divine feminine, right? Man would be the divine masculine, in this case, the representation of that. It is basically the perfect balance of both energies. Now, this is where it starts getting really exciting, because when you start talking about geometry and thinking about how each of the shapes intertwine, as well as how they react to one another, it creates different energies. So the flower of life, which if you haven't seen the flower of life or the seed of life, I will put some photos in the show notes and you can refer to them. I will also put some links to sacred geometry if you would like to see what these look like as you're listening to this. Imagine you have two circles and you have them overlapping. And that shape in the middle, which is sort of an eye shape, that is called the Vesica Piscis. Now, if you take Vesica Piscis, draw a line down the center, going horizontally, and then connect it to the apex at the top, you are going to have an equilateral triangle, and it will be pointing upwards. And then likewise, you will have another equilateral triangle pointing downwards if you go in the other direction. Now, when you do this, what does that create? That creates the balance of the masculine and feminine energies. So when it comes to sacred geometry, it is all about the balance. And when you are drawing, let's say, the flower of life, you might say, well, with the flower of life, it's all circles. Well, yes, it is. But if you've ever seen Metatron's cube, it is drawn within the flower of life with straight lines connecting the vertices, thereby creating Metatron's cube within the flower of life. Hence, the balance of the masculine and the feminine energy. So I'm one of those people that I really was not a huge fan of math, but I loved geometry. So when I was in school, I did very well at geometry. It's not a huge surprise given the fact that I then moved on to become a designer and was working in 3D modeling programs and things like that. So geometry was very much a part of my everyday life and still is to this day. So I can talk about geometry all day long, but that's not what we're here to specifically discuss, which is actually how sacred geometry works and what we can do with it in order to help us on our spiritual journeys. This is just a brief overview of what sacred geometry is. Now, I challenge you to go out into the world and just see how many different pieces of sacred geometry you can find. So I'm talking about things like rose windows in churches. Those are really wonderful examples of sacred geometry. Pyramids, obelisks, we have them here in Paris, and I know that there are obelisks everywhere in the world, right? Just make note of all the places in which you find this sacred geometry and just kind of look at it from an energetic standpoint of what it's trying to tell you. And let's say while you're out exploring, you find some piece of architecture or artwork or something in your experience that you just don't seem to like. And you don't know why you don't like it. You're not really resonating with it, or it's just not doing it for you. And I want you to identify what it is about that building or that object that you do not like. Because more times than not, it is because it is either not in energetic resonance with you, or there is disharmony within that object. So if we think about the Fibonacci sequence and how that's represented in the golden ratio. So think about a spiral, right? Like a snail shell going from very, very small in the center and going all the way out and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. That is the Fibonacci sequence, and that is perfect geometry. That is something that's very pleasing to us, for us to see, to experience, to look at. And if you are looking at something that doesn't feel harmonious, then more times than not, there is probably discord in the way that that object or that building has been created. And it may not even be something that's perceptible to you. It could be something like where it's situated on the street. Maybe it's a little bit off, like maybe one of the angles is a little bit off, or maybe just something isn't right in the construction of the building. And you may be picking up on that very, very small disharmony within the whole. This can be applied to music as well. Because music is made up of numbers and math and geometry, it is very much in line with exactly what we're talking about. So any of the rules that we're talking about, any of the applications that we're talking about today can be applied with music as well. So if you feel that there's a particular piece of music that you are drawn to because it is in harmonic resonance with your frequency, with your soul, then you're really going to love that music. If it is out of sync with your energetic frequency, you're going to repel that music. And even so, even within a piece of music, there might be various places in which some of it resonates with you and some of it doesn't. So it is very much about whether or not it is matching and resonating with your own energy. So it's not overall, it is whether or not your energy and the energy of the music or the building or the artwork or whatever it is in harmonious union with you. So let's talk about your energetic field as it pertains to sacred geometry. If you want to think about a torus, imagine that energy coming up from your root chakra, going all the way up the central core of your body through your chakra system, all the way to your crown chakra, and allow that energy to move up and out and to the right of you. We're going to do this in a two-dimensional way first, so I can explain to you how this works. So imagine that energy is coming out the top of your head to your right, and then back down through the side, and then up back towards your root chakra. So that's creating this sort of this semicircle or this oval that is going around your right side. Then imagine this torus created on the other side as well, right? So you're going up from your root chakra all the way up to your crown, and then out and over to the left and back under towards your root chakra. Imagine this is happening in 3 dimensions. This is happening all around you, all around your auric field, your energetic field. This is what makes up your energetic field. If you think about the center, so in other words, your chakra system being the center of the torus, that is setting the tone for your energetic field. This is why your chakra system is so important, because it's basically setting the tone for all of the energy that you're putting out. And that energy that you're putting out in this toroidal shape is actually making up what you are putting out and what you are attracting. So let's say your energetic field is not putting out the type of energy that you would like. Let's say it's more negative energy or lower energies, however you want to quantify it. And it is all relative based on where your 0 point is, where your base is. And that 0 point is sort of in your chakra system. If you want to think about the torus that you have going on in your energetic field, it is going to be that 0 point. So what you have going on there is going to set the tone. And you can use sacred geometry in order to shift that energy. Because if you go back to what we were talking about earlier, which is the fact that every cell in your body has a sacred geometric structure, that means that there is something in the cells of your body or something in your field, essentially, that is out of whack or basically not harmonious at the moment. So how can you get that back into alignment? Well, there are so many different ways you can do it. The first way is to meditate on sacred geometry. So simply having a flower of life or Metatron's cube or something that has that balance, or if let's say you're feeling like you are in your divine masculine energy or even distorted masculine energy, then maybe you want to focus on something that has a little bit more feminine energy, okay? Pick your sacred geometry based on what you are feeling. And just like picking your crystals, it's going to be the same thing. Like you're going to pick something that is going to resonate for you. So whatever it is you're feeling gravitated towards, that's probably the right piece of sacred geometry for you. Now, a lot of people will take mandalas or other types of geometry and start sketching it or color it. You know, there are coloring books with mandalas. There's all kinds of things that you can do. Just focusing on that harmonious sacred geometry can do a lot to shift what is going on at that singularity point, at that 0 point within your chakra system. Because imagine if you have one little cell, and let's say that cell has a sacred geometric structure, and you are feeling guided to meditate on another particular sacred geometric structure. So you have two pieces of sacred geometry, and because of your intuition, they match. You don't necessarily need to know what piece of sacred geometry is in that cell, but you are using your intuition to say, okay, I'm connecting what I know that my body needs at this moment. And imagine that cell having that piece of sacred geometry that is very, very, very tiny. It's very small. But then you are focusing on something that is maybe the size of a sheet of paper. Imagine that being almost like an amplifier. It's like a megaphone, or if you will, a bat signal. So it's like shining a giant light on that piece of geometry. If you have cells within your body that are incongruent, or if they're just not in alignment, focusing on that piece of sacred geometry is going to basically operate like a bat signal, and it's going to create this beautiful, harmonious energy that's going to be amplified to be able to start healing within your energetic field. This is why crystal grids are so, so important when it comes to manifestation, because it is such a huge amplifier to use a Metatron's cube or a flower of life or a Vesica Pisces in order to create that crystal grid and amplify your intentions. There are many instances where you can use that amplification in larger ways. So in other words, use your apartment or your house as the piece of sacred geometry. Almost plot a circle or a square around your house. Place the crystals where you would in your house that will create that geometric form. It will amplify the positivity. It'll amplify the negativity. So you have to make sure that when you are doing this, that your house is definitely clear, that you've done your clearing rituals, whether it's with Palo Santo, whether it's with just divine source light that you're channeling throughout your house, or whether it's with sage or, you're using actual crystals to clear your space. Make sure that your space is nice and clear before you do this, because it will amplify whatever is there. And you don't want to necessarily amplify any sort of lower or negative energies that may be stuck or maybe still in your space. Using crystal grids, as I do every month, I love doing crystal grids. They're just fun to do, and it's really great to be able to set the intention for the month. And once you set that intention and you activate it with the grid, you literally just walk away and you don't even think about it. And it's a really beautiful way to set those manifestation intentions and not really focus and obsess about them, because one of the main ways in which you can sabotage your manifestations is sort of obsessing and wondering if they're going to come. So this allows you to sort of release and let go. So crystal grids are a really great way to use sacred geometry. So let's go back to that toroidal energy field for a moment, because as we are going through this ascension process and as we are amplifying that beautiful, positive, harmonious energy within our field, our energetic fields actually get bigger and bigger. And when they start to enlarge like that, that means they're going to be touching energies that they haven't really touched before. So imagine you are on the ground and your energy field is not only going above you, but below you. So it's sort of hitting underground a little bit. Okay. So it's basically getting into that really dense energy. And sometimes it's hard to get out of that dense energy because it is just so solid, right? As you're going through this ascension process, so imagine that you are raising up just a little bit, maybe a foot off the ground, or let's say, a half a meter off the ground, and you are essentially making your energetic field, your toroidal field, bigger. Now, that means your energetic field is still touching the ground. It's still hitting the ground, but it's the outer edges. And because your energetic field is so much bigger now, the effect of that ground energy is not going to be as much as it would be if you were in a smaller energetic field and actually touching the ground. So as you ascend, let's say now you are 1 meter above the ground or 3 feet above the ground, now your energetic field is just so much bigger, and it's just the barely the edge of your energetic field is touching the earth or touching the ground. Then that means basically what's happening is, in this particular instance, you are not as grounded, which is why as we ascend, we need to ground so much more. And then also, if you consider that ground plane as almost like the lower energies, meaning that for this example, you're going to say that, let's say that's the 3D world versus as we're ascending into the 5D, that essentially what happens is you stop being in that sort of more 3D energy and you're raising up to the 5D. As your energetic field gets bigger and bigger and bigger, you still will feel those, what you would call lower energies or the 3D energies, but they're not going to be as strong. So that is why when we're on this spiritual path, when we're on the spiritual journey, essentially what happens is that it gets easier and easier and easier to move through those denser energies. And this is why this is so important when it comes to knowing how all of this works in terms of geometry, is because when you understand that your energetic field is actually expanding from the 0 point, which is you, and it's expanding based on the energy that you are putting in and the amount of work that you're doing on your energetic field, it's amazing that you know that you are 100% in control of your spiritual ascension. I want you to imagine that you have the ground level, then you have, let's say, 1 meter up, then 2 meters up, then 3 meters up. Let's just use that as an example of you're moving upwards in your ascension process. And so let's say now you've reached the 3 meter mark and your energetic field is barely even touching the earth. And you just reached this 3 meter mark. And now all of a sudden you're having ascension symptoms and you're getting headaches and you're not feeling that grounded, and you're like asking your guides, like, why is this happening? And then you're getting downloads and you're getting all this information from the divine and you're getting all of these things. And you're like, why is this happening so fast? What you don't realize is that you have the control to be able to slow that down, because as you are rising up in this toroidal field, you can actually pull in your energy a little bit and say, you know what? I think I'm going to pull my energy a little bit closer to me so it's not touching those higher levels so fast or so much, because maybe my physical body is not quite yet there, not quite in alignment to be able to handle those types of energies. I'm going to pull my energy back and I'm going to allow my body to adjust before I push my energetic field back out again. So then you might ask, how do I prepare myself to sort of be in those higher levels of energy? And if you are starting to feel the physical symptoms, the ascension symptoms of that process of being in higher energies, what exactly can we do? Well, there's quite a bit that we can do in order to help prepare ourselves. sacred geometry is one of those things that we can use in order to help balance our bodies and get our bodies prepared for the higher energies. If you haven't heard me do a body scan before, I might do this in an episode coming up next season where I actually take you through a body scan where I can show you how you can actually do this yourself and go from the top of your head, from your soul star chakra to your crown, and then all the way down to your feet, down through the center of the earth, grounding yourself, and then kind of looking at each of your chakras and seeing what needs to be worked on and seeing what needs to shift or change or be in balance. And the geometric shapes are a really good way to be able to communicate with you and your higher self as to what needs to be worked on. So I might go through the chakra system and see various different colors or various different images of things that are telling me that a chakra is in or out of alignment. So occasionally, and more often than not, if somebody is having an issue with their throat chakra, I will see like triangles coming out of the throat chakra, and they're not equilateral triangles. They're triangles going in every which way, in every shape or form. And that's telling me that the person is not, they're not speaking their truth. They're not saying the things that they want to say. They're not communicating well. And likewise, if you see a piece of sacred geometry in a chakra that is in perfect alignment, that's something that you can see within your mind's eye, within however you tap into your intuition, you can see where it is that somebody is in alignment and where they are out of alignment. So just recently, I just had a session and we were going through the body, and you can see that, let's say there are 2 circles just above your shoulders. Okay, so well, that would tell me that you've got some divine feminine energy over each shoulder. And then you can ask your guides, okay, is this something that needs to be here? And then you can get a yes or a no based on that. You can also use your pendulum, and your pendulum will be able to tell you yes or no. And if that's too much feminine energy for your shoulders, then you can call in, ask some divine masculine energy to come in. So what I would do is I would say, okay, in those circles, I'm going to actually create 2 squares. And that's going to create that balance in the masculine and feminine energy. And if that's still not enough, then maybe one needs to be completely replaced with a square. The other one is it stays a circle. So then you have that balance. So you can go through each of the chakras in the body, and I'm talking about all of your chakras, not just the central chakras that we always talk about, which are like the crown all the way down to the root chakra. We have so many other chakras throughout our body that we don't even talk about, that people don't even know about. So during the session, we were working with the chakras in the palms of our hands. And both of us, we were looking at it, both of us have stars at the palms of our hands, which is an indication of healing. It is the healing symbol of being able to transfer energy to or channel energy through your hands in order to heal others. Now, this is something that is a little bit more advanced, doing the body scan, checking all the chakras, seeing what sacred geometry shapes are within the chakras that are within the body. And if it's not something that you can do right away, it's totally fine. Just make sure that you are doing whatever practice works for you, okay? And that means if you are not somebody who is really tapped into your clairvoyance, where you can see those shapes within the body, maybe you are meant to work with music. So music is that beautiful way of connecting to sacred geometry without having to think too much about it. Because we all know what music resonates with us and what doesn't the second we hear it. So put on a piece of music that you really adore, that you really love, and maybe meditate on a piece of sacred geometry while you're listening to it. And that will create that resonance between the sacred geometry and the music, and it will create that instant harmony within your energetic field. And likewise, if you are more into clairsensing, In the Feng Shui episode that we had with Lorraine, she was talking about the earth, air, fire, water, and metal that they use in Feng Shui. And each one of those is represented by a particular shape. Now, you don't necessarily need to know that shape, but you know, let's say that water represents that divine feminine. So if you need to use the feeling of water to come into balance with your energy, then you can use that feeling. You can use that feeling of earth to ground you, to be in that grounded feminine energy, right? So you can use sacred geometry in so many different ways, and you can use it to the advantage of your own gifts. It was funny because in my session with my client recently, we were talking about how there is very much in monuments as well as architecture, a lot of masculine dominant energetic shapes. You take the pyramids, for example, in Giza, those are all very masculine shapes. And so we were kind of talking about how we can bring more divine feminine energy into certain areas like that. And it is simple as envisioning what it would be like to be at the pyramids in Giza, and imagine energetically you're putting those pyramids in a circle. Creating that circle energy around those pyramids it's basically going to bring more balance. It's going to bring that softening of the energy into that space. And that's a really grand example, is a huge example, but you can do this on a smaller scale. So if you find that your space or that some place where you work or anywhere you are is too masculine or too feminine, or you're feeling an imbalance in either one, feel free to play with these geometric shapes, these pieces of sacred geometry, and sort of energetically place them where you would like to place them in order to bring more harmony and balance, and see if it changes and shifts that energy for you. Have fun with this. Literally just wander around the city you live in and just start recognizing and understanding and observing the various different shapes and pieces of sacred geometry you come across. I can guarantee you walk by them every single day and don't even notice. Start noticing now and start working with this energy, because it's going to do wonders for you. I want to thank you for joining me today. And I look forward to walking this journey with you and pointing the way on your spiritual journey. If you are interested in learning more about me and the sessions that I do, feel free to go to my website at infinitesoullove.com. On all social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Infinite Soul Love 1111. Hey, and if you feel called, I would love it if you could rate The Heart of You on whatever streaming service you're using, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Please take a moment, give it a review. It really does help the channel. Thanks so much.